What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Daniel Kelly podcast. I'm your host, Daniel, and today's guest is John Gigante. John is a husband, father, entrepreneur, former Division I soccer player, and a USA Today bestselling author of the book With Intention, a book about a proven path to uncommon results, unleashed influence, and ultimate fulfillment. Over the course of his career, John has also closed more than $500 million in sales, but it wasn't the boardroom that shaped him most. It was the internal battles that he had to face and the decision to stop performing and start showing up with purpose and intention. So, John, welcome to the show.
Man, so good to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Kind welcome.
Yeah. So, I guess I kind of want to continue that conversation we were having off camera about tendencies that we have when we're speaking. And I was just sharing how I tend to use the word like and and I know you just were saying how you were having a conversation about that. And so what are you doing to, because so guys, he's a speaker, he does keynotes, right? You get into all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And you're just sharing something powerful that I thought you're going to, you're implementing with your wife. What is that?
Well, it's funny because you brought up that you were trying not to say like, and I just had this conversation this morning.
Yeah.
Because I had a call yesterday, and AI now tells you, I think it was Fathom or one of these applications, says, hey, here's how you did on the call. Here's how much you talked versus the other person. Here was the sentiment. Here are the takeaways, whatever. But this is the first time I saw this. At the end of it, it said your filler words. So it told me how many times it said like or 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 whatever. And I think it rated me at I almost said like right there.
Yeah.
I'm starting to catch it. At 4% of my words were filler words.
Yeah.
And so I've prided myself on not saying a lot of filler words and done a lot of work at it, but it just goes to show though there's always
always room to grow.
Right?
I think I already see this episode going. I'm gonna try and not use the word like or So guys,
it's all right if you do it.
Yeah, we're just gonna keep going.
I'm gonna do it too.
Yeah,
right?
it'll be good. But let's I want to dive into your book with intention. So where did the idea of that book, where did that blossom? How did that come about?
Yeah, gosh. So early on, I mean, it was a lifelong dream to always write a book. So both my parents were school teachers.
Yeah.
My mom was an English teacher. So I swear from the time I was little, there was always this creative muscle that was being drawn out a little bit. So I remember picking up a book in 8th grade called The Edge, which was written by this guy, Howard Ferguson, who was the wrestling coach at St. Edward High School in Cleveland. And so it was maybe 7th, 8th grade, I think. Basically, it was a book of motivational quotes and maybe some stories. It was a lot of sports-driven stuff. And I was a young athlete, and that was one of the first things I had read that it was fuel.
Yeah.
I would pick it up and I would read it.
Young and ambitious.
Young,
at
ambitious.
8th grade.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It was kind of a bigger coffee table type book. I just remember it having a big influence on me. It was really cool.
Yeah.
So that's where the seeds were originally born. Like, if someone creates something, someone else can read it.
Yeah.
And you can get something out of it.
You know what's cool too is books are generational.
Yeah, for sure.
That thought just came to mind.
No doubt.
What you wrote, when did you write the book?
I wrote
2018?
Or
when did it come out?
21 is when I wrote it, published in 22.
Gotcha.
So it's about an 18-month, 2-year process from start to finish. But the seeds were 8th grade, 7th grade, what is that, 13, 14 years old. And it still took me 30 plus years to actually
do it,
knuckle down and do it. So it's one of those things. Honestly, if COVID didn't happen, I probably wouldn't have written the book because I was in sales, traveling all the time. And then all of a sudden not traveling as much and was thinking about, all right, what can I do with some of this time? And so, I jumped in and did.
That's funny you say that. You talk about the 30-year gap.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to go. I don't want to dive into this just yet. I'd like to do that towards the end. But you write it. You talk about in this book closing the gap between knowing and doing.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that. But
for sure,
I want to read this the beginning excerpt, and then we can just dive in. So you open the book by saying, "The book you're about to read reveals a secret, my secret, It's one that nearly destroyed my marriage, my career, and my legacy as a father. Because of my silence, my mental health suffered. My relationship with God, or lack thereof, also suffered. I failed to see the needs of the people around me because I was caught up inside an internal prison. Can you take us back to that season of life? What was going on?
Yeah. Let me go back context wise. So I think it's an important piece.
Absolutely.
So, 5th grade, I get home from school. My mom sits me down and says, "Your dad's in the hospital. He had a nervous breakdown." So I'm 10 years old or so. My dad was always around, amazing guy, connector. You'd never know he had an issue. He was an Italian immigrant, came over when he was 6 years old. So one of those situations where he was the first person to go to college in his family. Actually, both my parents were the first.
Yeah.
So Italian immigrant family, blue collar, do whatever it takes to make ends meet. So my dad worked 2 jobs. He was a college professor and then owned an Italian imported foods grocery store.
Wow.
With his brother in Cleveland. So it was literally like all week he
knew how to work hard.
He knew how to work hard. So he would work at the school all week and then he'd wake up at 4 a.m. to go bake the bread and make the pizza and everything else on the weekends. And then he'd come home and sleep a lot. And he was always very present at games and whatnot.
Yes.
But I never knew anything was wrong. And so he goes away for a couple weeks, comes back, and it was like we swept it. The family, at least to my recollection, never really addressed it, never really talked about it.
Like anxiety,
just what it was. I think what happened was there was some friction between him and his brother, and the business maybe wasn't going well.
Do you think there was a space for him to even express that? Was there because I know one thing that I think people in the older generation, 50s, 60s, there's kind of the stigma attached that you don't talk about your problems.
Sure. Yeah, I think so. I think that was it. It was, again, this blue collar mindset.
Yeah.
We're going to make ends meet. At least to my knowledge, he didn't talk about it with family at all. I have no idea if he talked about it at all with friends or whatnot. I know he got treatment, and but fast forward a few years, lived a fine life. It was looking back, there's things in the environment you wish you would have changed, but very encouraging. Both my brothers were athletes too, so we all played collegiate athletics, so we were pretty decent at it. My dad was a college wrestler too, so this was in the family blood. And I was great. I was doing really good, doing good at soccer. And by the way, after that happened in 5th grade, get called into the guidance counselor's office. And I remember just sitting across the table like this. Guidance counselor says, "John, how you doing? I heard about your dad." I didn't even address it. I just said, "What do you mean? I'm great. Got straight A's and I'm playing every sport imaginable. I'm fine." So I didn't even know at the time that I was just burying stuff and it was almost like it was in the DNA of.
That's my first thought is that's learned.
Yeah.
Because if your parents are vulnerable, you're going to inherently be more vulnerable.
Right.
If you're more safeguarded, then it's all learned what I'm starting to.
Yeah. I love the concept of it's caught, not taught.
Yes. Ed Mila right there.
Right?
Yes.
Is that what Ed Mila? Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Perfect.
Yes.
I love it.
We talked about that at our last coffee.
Yeah. Amazing, right? And it's so
good.
true. The environment that we provide, the space we provide for people, they will pick stuff up.
AKA talk is cheap.
Right. Yes. It's about actions, not words, right? So fast forward a few years, I was fortunate to earn a scholarship to play soccer at Bowling Green.
Yeah, come on.
Had a really good first year. Come home from school between my freshman and sophomore year. And my older brothers were out doing their stuff, so I was the only one living at home at the time. I was doing a landscaping job. I'd come home, I'd usually landscape all day, and then I'd go and do my conditioning or go play soccer with a group of guys or whatever.
Yeah.
So I come home. Money was always a pretty big issue in our family. And I remember my dad was coming home late from work or something, and my mom had made chicken fingers, and I'm hungry. I just got home, and I remember I ate the whole plate of chicken fingers. Dad walks in, and you could tell he was just not happy that there was no dinner on the table. And it escalated. There again, money was always a big thing, and I think at this time I feel like my dad had maybe put my mom on a somewhat of an allowance on how much money he was giving her to spend, which got me thinking about the details of the story.
It's good. Yeah. Let's talk about it.
My mom takes a $20 bill. They're kind of arguing, fighting. She rips it up. My dad goes out into the garage and he comes back with a baseball bat.
Wow.
So thankfully I'm there.
What was going through your head?
I mean, it's crazy, right? You think, I can't believe I'm in this spot. I felt this is years brewing, and there were issues in the past.
Yeah.
Never thought my dad would ever do anything, and he didn't. Thankfully I was there and I was able to separate.
Yeah, de-escalate.
And I got my mom out the door, outside, leave. For the first time ever, at least that I remembered, I saw my dad cry.
Wow.
He cried in my arms at that moment. And
that does something to you when you see your pops cry.
It's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
It's just never, this is your hero. It's someone, I look back at it actually, and I appreciate the moment.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's just something, there was something in this moment of grief. It was hard, and I'll share the rest of the story here. It was a tough time. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I also wouldn't change it because I saw this side of my dad, and I knew he was broken. He was, then this is, again, years. You talk about, this is probably 8 years after he went into the hospital. And their relationship ended after that. So they ended up getting divorced. Pretty messy for a couple of years. But
what did that before?
Please.
Did that shift the way you viewed love after that?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you think it did?
I think it's not only shifted. I grew up in this environment of probably not a lot. We talk about caught, not taught.
Yes.
Not a lot of love shown.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even I think about after soccer games or any sport. I mean, my dad both my parents were super encouraging. But it was always like, good game.
Yeah.
Right? There weren't a lot of hugs. There was probably a lot more handshakes than hugs. Not any I love yous.
Yeah.
I can remember.
I remember me and my dad were talking about that. Or this was his. I think his dad was pretty good about, expressing that. I mean, could always better, but it was his grandfather who never really told his dad, I love you. Like, just, not getting that affection. I think that's so important.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
And it is a generational thing. Sometimes I feel like my wife and I tell our kids we love them too much.
Too much?
I mean, maybe there is something to that. Now, I would argue probably not.
Yeah.
And look, my parents loved my brothers and I so much, and they both passed here in the last few years. I know they loved us, but just didn't express it a lot. Honestly, it was an identity thing too. By the way, no faith growing up.
Okay.
And I think about why their marriage eventually broke apart because there was not a faith foundation.
So they weren't, because I guess when I think about Catholic immigrants, I think they're Catholic. So
Roman Catholic.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So did they come from that, or were they just we don't believe in God in this household?
So can we have the faith conversation?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We can talk about anything and everything.
So I grew up in this environment where didn't go to church.
Yeah.
But got baptized. I go to my grandma's house. There's a crucifix on the wall.
Yeah.
Never prayed. I remember my cousin came over one time in high school, my dad's cousin, and prayed over dinner.
Oh, that was probably weird.
Dude, I thought it was the craziest thing ever. I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
This is so weird.
Yes.
And so, yeah, man, it was just we never talked about it. Honestly, and it was probably my spiritual maturity too, but I went to a Catholic high school. I ended up going to St. Ed's for a couple of years.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's right.
First time I'd go to Bible class, but I didn't know the Bible. They'd hand them out for class. I remember memorizing some stuff, but God forbid you're not writing in it, right? It was, for me, it felt very transactional. And by the way, full respect to Catholicism. This is not disparaging at all.
This ain't a hit piece on them.
Not at all, because I gave my life to Christ 10 years ago.
Yeah, 2015, right?
2015, and I've been to Catholic churches since then and love it.
Yeah.
The sermon, I mean, unbelievable, but I just wasn't spiritually mature enough then. But yeah, so I look back at the faith foundation, and for me, that's why it's so important for my family and my marriage. we've gone through plenty of challenges,
Yes.
but to go back on the rock and that foundation is huge. It's saved
It's the
Shell and I's
anchor.
marriage
Yeah.
for sure.
I want to, before we go, because
Yeah.
I do want to hear more about that.
No,
I want to
go for
veer
it.
back though to you talking about how your parents, they ended up getting,
Yep.
you know, divorced. And you told that story about how your dad, the baseball bat.
Yep.
Because I remember that the original question was just talking about like what was going on in that season of life.
Yeah.
So I guess you're just continuing on talking about your story. So,
Yeah. If you think about it, so sports was everything to me.
yeah.
For a brief season, school was when I went to an all boys school for 2 years. It was
Mhm.
soccer and academics.
Yes.
And I was able to excel in academics. And then once I transferred to a co-ed school, a public school, and my grades went downhill fast.
Because the girls got in the mix.
Yeah. So my identity was totally in a soccer ball.
Yes.
It really was. It was all the affirmation I got from not just my family, but from everybody. And I was fortunate to grow up. It's one of those situations where you're in an environment, you get pretty good at something, which gives you more access to better coaching, better environment. So
cooler friends.
Sure. Yeah. Everything, right?
Yeah.
So soccer was everything.
Yes.
And so here's how much my family loved me. This is going to tell you, and this is a crazy thing on identity too.
Mm.
They loved me so much. My parents moved from North Ridgeville, Ohio on the west side of Cleveland to Brecksville, Ohio, 30 minutes away, just so I could play high school soccer my junior and senior year with a good soccer team.
They moved just because of soccer.
Moved just because of soccer. Now, is soccer a revenue-producing sport?
Kind of.
Maybe a little bit more now.
Yeah.
Like there was no way, no path to really make a lot of money at it.
Yeah.
So when you hear people that move, it's basketball, it's football, which you could maybe make sense of because you're playing on better teams, more exposure. I mean, these high school, college kids are all making money now, whatever. So we moved 30 minutes away. I go on to win 2 state championships at Brecksville High School. So I played. The team was already pretty darn good.
Yeah.
By the way, that's a whole nother thing because everybody in Cleveland hated me because I made a team better.
Yeah.
These guys were already really good. So like, this is BS.
Yes.
Now and me and another guy transferred.
Yes.
So we go on to win 2 state titles.
Mm-hmm.
Senior year, perfect record, 22-0.
That's insane.
Amazing experience. Actually played down the street at Dublin Kaufman High School back in 92, 93. Grass field. So for those in Columbus, it was turf now. But I share that story with you because this whole performance mindset and perfection mindset was brewing, and I had a lot of success and everything. Even though I was having some of those struggles at home, I would say, even then looking back, everything was really good. I loved it. I was having a lot of success on the field. So the Bowling Green coach came to see one of our state tournament games. 2 of my teammates were incredible players. These guys are unbelievable. Jason McGann, Dan Kindle. He came to see them. Dan's brother Dave was already at Bowling Green. Mel Mailer's the guy, the coach. I have one of the best games at Cleveland State quarterfinal. We beat Youngstown Boardman 6-4. Next thing you know, I'm getting a scholarship offer too. So I went to college to BG with 3
high school.
Actually 4, because there's one older kid. So 4 of us played together, but 3 guys from my senior year. So,
wow.
So again, identity. Let's run it back.
It's just
let's
rooted.
keep playing
Rooted in the soccer ball.
in the result.
Yeah.
So we go to BG. We have a really good freshman year. Didn't make the tournament. Lost in the MAC final to Miami. By the way, your old
the old stomping grounds.
And so I come home my freshman year. My parents get in that big fight. And I remember going back to school, and I remember thinking, they are grieving. They're lost. Their relationship is over. I remember distinctly thinking this. I can't grieve. It's not me that's going through this. It's them that's going through it. So you think about caught, not taught.
Yeah.
And just my mindset was, I'm going to suck it up, and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to.
Why do you think you thought that that wasn't? You're like, okay, this is not my problem. This is their problem.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it's this element of pride and not wanting to show weakness. I didn't have the maturity to know that, no, it would actually be way better to address this and grieve a little bit.
Yeah.
instead of sweeping it,
Yes.
that's why I go back to how family never talked about it.
You mentioned in the book about how you did sweep this under the.
Absolutely.
You swept it under the rug.
Yeah.
And then, okay.
Yeah, man. So to give you, I'll give you a little bit of the Cliff's Notes version. So I never said anything to any teammates. I go back to school, played with 3 out of my high school teammates. Some of my best friends still to this day, never said a word to them. Hey, I'm struggling with this. My parents split up. Yada, yada. I earned a starting job. Sophomore year, we're ranked top 20 in the country. So for a MAC school, is pretty good.
Yeah,
we
that's
run
solid.
a really good run. Made 3 NCAA tournaments, 2 Sweet 16s.
Wow.
I was good enough. One of the tournaments my sophomore year, I was named MVP of one of the tournaments. So I was the best player, deemed the best player on the field for the weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm rolling. I'm thinking things are good. But here's the thing. Underneath the surface, I was starting to crack. So we used to do this thing called the Cooper test, which was 2 miles in 12 minutes around a track, by the way. So it's
2 miles in 12 minutes.
right.
That sounds brutal.
Back-to-back 6-minute miles. It is brutal.
Yeah.
It's the most brutal test. It's more mental than physical,
Yes.
in all honesty. But I used to run it in like 11 minutes. And for the first time that preseason, I cracked and I ran it in like 14 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring that up because it was the first time I felt something inside of me where I used to always be able to grin and bear it and just
Push it down.
suppress it.
Yeah.
It was the first time my performance struggled that I felt it. And so, again, never did anything about it. So about 10 games through my sophomore year, I just became a head case.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could be the best player. And by the way, I was not the best player on that team.
There's some, when you started to become a head case, 10 games in, you had failed you didn't get the Cooper test in the 12 minutes.
Yep.
Were you, before that, starting to do things that were outside the ordinary, or do you think this just stemmed from the internal turmoil because of the divorce? Or do you think, or did you start start drinking and partying a lot?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
It's a combination. I don't want to just, and there's no blame in this. It's just what was happening in life. I had a relationship that wasn't going great with a girl. I had, partying too much.
Yeah.
Alcohol and drugs.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You think about that and that atmosphere too, that high performing of an atmosphere. It was crazy to me looking back, that culture.
Especially you get a little taste when you're a freshman, you're kind of thinking, I'm the man.
You think you're invincible,
yeah.
right? I still had that. I was cocky and arrogant and whatever else. And so, so brain's not fully developed.
Mm-hmm.
And you're to make it onto the field at that level too. And it was a good team. It was you're fighting for a spot every practice. It was that good.
Wow.
I mean, we probably had 24 guys on the roster. I bet you 20 of the guys you could have inserted, and the team was still going to be really good.
Okay.
In fact, it was so competitive when I was there. Our second team in practice, which I ended up being on for much of my career, would beat the first team a lot in training sessions.
Dang.
So it was pretty.
Yeah, it was competitive.
Very competitive. So I just was up and down, man. I'd have a good game. And I'd feel good, and then I'd remember. And it was almost like if my first touch was good, it would snowball, and if my first touch was bad, it would snowball. It seems so stupid looking back at it, but it's just how life is.
Makes
sometimes.
sense.
It's just a mindset thing. So I became a total head case. It got to the point where I could barely cross a soccer ball consistently. And I was a left-footed player, outside midfielder, so my bread and butter was just to cross the ball in. I remember my coach had me in training sessions, and he never knew I was going through this. I didn't even know I was going through this mentally. It's almost like I didn't want to even touch it.
Yeah.
But he would have me just kick the ball into the goal, just mimicking crossing. That was my training. Yeah. Sometimes at the beginning of practice, it was very embarrassing. All my teammates are warming up, and I'm just practicing crossing the ball into the goal. I mean, it was so silly to think about. But that's performance. That's why I'm so into peak performance now, because it's the little things, like the marginal gains. That's where everything and the magic is.
Yes.
So
not tied to a paycheck.
Yeah. And just it's the things we do to prepare ourselves for the battle, whatever that battle is.
That's why I love what your friend James Clear talks about, where he's so systems driven instead of outcome driven. I think when you are outcome driven, it steals so much joy because you're just focused on, and then you're going to, just focused on the outcome. And then when you get to the outcome, you're like, dang, this actually isn't what I thought it'd feel like.
Yeah.
So, but
I didn't understand all that at the time.
Yeah.
So you think about anybody that gets good at something, you've obviously developed systems to
Yes.
train and practice and reps to get good.
Yes.
I wish I knew James Clear back then.
Oh,
You know that. And look, a lot in my book, I talk about my work and how his work has inspired me, because that's certainly part of that. Identity-based habits is a huge thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you fast forward though, so I end up and down in college to the point, Sweet 16, senior year of college. We're playing Indiana University. They're the best team in the country. We're like 15th. And we're down 1-0. I don't get in the game until the last 10 minutes. I get the ball really quickly after I get into the game, so there's a chance to tie the game. I get an opportunity to cross the ball, and I cross, and the ball just floats up, goes right to their goalie. They come down within a minute and score goal 2, and I think they scored 2 more on us, so they beat us 4-0.
Yeah, that sucks.
Game's on national TV, by the way, too. So this was like my the end of my career. Had a couple pro tryouts, but I was in no shape to make it at that point.
Yeah.
And so, again, identity, I failed at something that my identity was in, and I was embarrassed, and I was depressed, and I numbed the pain. That's what you do. So drugs, alcohol.
Girls,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was a mess. And I started to see a therapist at Bowling Green, but I never told anybody that I was doing. None of my
Wait,
teammates.
at least you went to therapy.
I did. Yes, I'm proud about that.
Yeah,
for sure.
I just think getting into that office space, most people will, especially coming from a family life where you don't necessarily talk about how you feel.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting that you had the awareness where you were like, I want to go seek that out.
Yeah. It was probably more desperation.
Okay. Yeah.
I needed something. Again, no faith. I wasn't going to say anything to my teammates.
This is going to be a crazy question.
Yeah.
Did you ever struggle with like suicidal thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. I would say not as much at that time. It happened a little bit later on in life.
Yeah. And
so if I fast forward a little bit, so I'm in hiding, right? I am seeing a therapist. I remember I was in my first psychiatrist office.
Wow. Okay.
The day after my 21st birthday. My dad drives over from Cleveland. It's in Perrysburg, Ohio, which is just by Bowling.
I know where. Yeah, I got family from Perrysburg.
Oh, do you?
Yep.
Oh,
Shout out Perrysburg.
I remember being in there, and within 20 minutes, this doctor diagnosed me with depression. Prescribed a medication.
What was that like, getting diagnosed with depression?
So for me at the time, it felt like a death sentence. Because, sorry, I get a little emotional talking about it.
You're good.
When my dad came home, the 5th grade story, and my dad wasn't perfect. There was plenty of challenges between him and my mom. There was always a fight about money, but my mom's rebuttal to my dad a lot of times was, well, you're crazy. Yeah. And, you learn, and it's in relationships, when stuff goes south, you find whatever it is that you can stick to that person.
Yes.
We all do it. It's human nature.
Yeah.
And so my mom would call my dad crazy.
Yeah.
And for me, it was this moment of thinking, I'm just like my dad. Not that that's a terrible thing, but that I'm crazy too. And that was hard because, one, I look back at it and it's silly in a lot of ways because this guy in 20 minutes diagnosed me, and who knows if it was the right diagnosis. I don't know. Yeah. But I go back to Bowling Green. This is before my senior year, and I start taking this medication. And I got in the best shape of my life. I stopped drinking because like the medication says you can't drink.
Yeah.
I probably could have. I remember being out in the bars with my teammates. I'm drinking Diet Cokes.
Yeah. Yep.
They used to call me Jono. Jono, what are you doing? Why aren't you partying? And I'm like, I'm getting in the best shape of my life senior year.
Yes.
Which I did. I got in the best shape.
Let's go.
Earned a starting spot my senior year. I won our Ironman. We used to do this Ironman competition. Start of the year, it's a conditioning, bunch of different challenges. So I won that.
So in the midst of that diagnosis, though, you weren't a victim, from what it sounded like.
Man, I don't always want to feel. No, I was not a victim, but yet I was in hiding.
Yeah.
Like why did I feel I couldn't tell them, hey guys, I'm going through something.
Yeah.
I got this diagnosis. I'm taking this medication. That's why I'm not drinking.
I think oftentimes that comes down to pride.
Pride, 100%.
I don't want people to see me in this light, because if they see me like this, they're going to know I'm not ABC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's somewhat of an alpha dog world. Any world, but in a locker room environment, in a Division I top 20 program where, again,
no weakness.
You're vying for a spot every single day. And so, man, I went, we had a great year. I did not have a great year. The team did well, but again, it was a pattern. My final 3 years, by midway through, I won a starting spot each year. By midway through the season, I was coming off the bench. I still played.
Yeah.
I was still okay. I was a shell of myself.
Yeah.
And so, you finish up school like that, and a bunch of my teammates went on to play afterwards, and I was embarrassed, man. My mom didn't even come to my last game because she was so. I don't know if it was embarrassed, but I think she was sick of coming to watch me play, where I wasn't either not playing or not playing as much as I could have been.
Yeah. Did that put a chip on your shoulder? To feel like you had to prove yourself to your mom?
I think it if I look back, I'm an affirmation guy.
Yes, me too.
I still am today.
I am too.
I need words of encouragement.
Yeah.
If you do 5
I think for me, words of affirmation is probably my biggest.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a reason why, which it probably does. Maybe it comes back to not hearing it as much as when I was younger. My parents were always super supportive, but as far as the, really speaking life into you, I wouldn't say I had too much of that. So that's probably why I am such a big words of affirmation guy, because I've experienced that. And when I hear that, I'm like, oh, this fills me up. And it's good.
It's like a drug.
Yes.
I actually was told too much how great I was. So my mom, dad, I was always encouraged, and I always felt like I was top level soccer player.
Yes.
But I craved it. I wanted to be great, and I worked my butt off to get there, but I needed the affirmation. And once, for example, I love being a starting player. There was a pride involved with that.
Yeah. And I think that's good.
There's good to it.
There is good to it, but if you put your identity in that, then that's bad.
So I was a bad teammate. Here's why. Once I got benched, and again, it's me having this performance struggles, but my coach pulled me aside at one point and said, John, we're going to pull you playing these weekend tournaments at the beginning of the season. So we were out in Fresno State, played Fresno State the first game. They were the top 5 in the country. I started the Saturday before we played SMU on Sunday. Coach calls me in the hotel room, California, and says, John, we're gonna bring you in off the bench. And for defensive purposes, we think that's you're better for us defensively.
Yeah.
So we're up on SMU 1-0 on Sunday. And in college soccer, it's not like pros where once you come out, you have to stay out. So you can kind of go in and out. So I played a little bit in the first half, came out.
Yeah.
Second half, we're up 1-0. We're winning. He tells me the day before, I'm going to be in for defensive purposes. I'm not in the game. We go on to lose the game 2-1. So instead of being mature and going in and talking to my coach and saying, hey, here's what you told me. I just want to have a conversation. You told me I would be in. That's why I didn't start, but then I'm not in the game. So I just want to contribute to the team and help. I did become a victim. Absolutely. You're onto something there. I did. I got pissed off. I started pouting. I remember going in to speak to the coaches a couple times. Again, never talking about the mental health stuff I was dealing with, but saying, I want to start. I believe I'm good enough to start. Verse, I want to contribute. I want to impact the team. How do I make the team better?
Yes.
So it was about me and not about the team.
Yes.
And what happens when you're going through these battles, and this is for anybody that's going through a battle, we become insular and selfish, rightfully so, because it becomes survival mode. I was in survival mode for many years. But looking back, and I tried it, my son's a 17-year-old soccer and basketball player, who, by the way, is very prideful about starting and not just contributing, he wants to be the best, which that's good in a lot of ways.
It's a noble pursuit to want to be excellent.
1,000%. But how do you still impact the team? I personally believe in sports, the most important players in the team are the non-starters now, because they can become the cancers.
Wow, yeah.
And they can also become the glue and the encouragers and the guys that push everybody, or the gals that push everybody else in training.
Wow, yeah.
Right?
That's good. Yeah.
So if I'm coaching, if I'm leading, it's not just about the top players. It's about how do you bring up the other guys too? And I think a lot of coaches and leaders miss that. They only focus on their top performers.
Stars.
Yeah. So looking back at it, I wish I could go back. We lost 2 Sweet 16s. I just wonder if I had a different mindset. Could I forget about me starting, but could I have contributed to the team chemistry a little bit better? Because I do leadership development work now.
Yes.
This is my career.
Yeah.
So now I can talk about this stuff and be transparent. And of course, hindsight's 20/20. It makes sense looking backwards.
Yeah.
Right. But at the time, I was too naive to know what was going on.
Wow. That servant mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, the same thing. Can I share the business piece?
Keep going, because I wanted to hear more about. You're talking about how your mother, she didn't show up to that last game, but I want to keep hearing more about your story. Just as far as just unpacking it all. So
yeah, look, my mom was my greatest encourager. By the way. So looking back, I see she was crushed that I wasn't reaching my potential. Yeah. That's what it was, and so she couldn't go and witness me not playing. Yeah. So that's just.
It sounds like she thought your potential though was in soccer, or like that was your.
I mean, I think she did. I think she saw potential in me as a human.
Gotcha. Okay.
For sure,
okay.
And she encouraged me that way. But certainly, soccer, yes, it was like, this is your thing since the time you were 3 years old.
Yeah.
And I travel all over the country to see you play. I mean, it's all the stuff. So maybe her identity was in it a little bit too. A lot of her best friends were from the game.
Yeah, I like that because I'm okay. I've recently gone through this a little bit, as I'm making a pivot in my professional career, whereas, I was flipping the houses, I saw great success doing that, doing the GC thing. And then, finding what I love to do, which is the media stuff. And as I'm making this pivot, am I making money from this stuff yet? No. Yep. But I know one day I will. And, I got this great solid thing that I left school. I dropped out of college to go do. And then, I quit doing that because I'm like, this isn't it. I don't want to build. I don't want to create this. Yep. And my parents are or I guess more so my mom, there's been times where she's like, well, what do I tell people that you do?
Yeah.
Like, tell them I'm figuring it out.
But we're all figuring it out.
I think, what you're saying about your mom, where there's such John, he's a stud of a soccer player. Like, she put her identity a little bit in that too. Whereas I start to see a parallel for my mom too, where it's like, oh, he's got this plan, he's got this great thing. Like, that's what he does. Yeah. Whereas now it's back to the unknown a little bit, even though we've kind of got to, off camera, we're working on some things. But
yeah.
So, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
A lot.
I think it's probably not all bad.
No, I don't think so. Also, I think it comes from a place of, love. For sure. And wanting to see your child succeed.
Yeah.
But their version of success is not the version of success that I imagine for myself.
Right.
So that's another thing. We can definitely talk to that as well, is because I know we'll get into this because we're both, love the masterminds, love seeking the wise counsel, love seeking advice from others, but also is understanding that How do I put this? It's really hard to listen and learn from somebody whose path you don't want.
Okay.
Right?
That's fair.
Or and not to say that path is bad, but
sure.
as far as you might just want a different result. So, I don't know if it's taking things with a grain of salt, but yeah, I don't know. I don't exactly know where.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes, ask me. Yes.
How old were you when you dropped out of school?
I was 20 years old. I was 6 weeks into my college.
6 weeks into school. So
6 weeks into my sophomore year of college.
Okay, gotcha. So you did make it through first year.
Yes, I made it through the first year.
So how did your parents react to that?
Oh, they were not cool. They're pretty upset. A lot of people were upset.
Sure.
Yeah.
What are you doing? At least make it through. Get your degree. It's going to open up so many doors.
Yeah. But I knew, honestly, the moment I stepped onto campus, I knew that school was not for me. Wow. I started to learn how to, I started self-educating myself with books, podcasts, resources, and my eyes were being opened because I was like, they're not, everything that they're reading in this, and I'm reading in this is not what I'm learning.
Yeah.
I frankly, and we were just talking about this off camera, I think higher education is flawed.
Sure.
100%.
Agreed.
Especially when it comes down to a business degree or it's like, dude, I don't even exactly know a business degree. I just, anyway, it's besides the point. But
you want to learn business, go into business.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I don't know, this is kind of random and this is kind of a half thought, but have you ever heard of a guy named Naval Ravikant?
Sure.
I love everything that, there's some things where I'm like, but most of his stuff is so freaking good. And he talks about that as like, there is no such thing as learning, or just like going to school to learn business. It's you learn it by doing it, right?
So I got to tell you, there's a Naval quote. I've heard James Clear quote.
Okay.
And I think I may butcher it, but paraphrasing it, it says to write a book, you need to become the book.
Yes.
To write a book, you need to become the book. And so there's a story about James, which is really interesting. So now we see him as the 20 million plus best-selling author of Atomic Habits.
Yes.
I don't know if I've ever shared the story with you, but I had lunch with him in 2016, 2 years before Atomic Habits published. He had just missed his second deadline and was not sure if he was ever going to publish the book. He was very good at writing short form.
Yeah, with his newsletters and all that.
Right. That's how we got
millions of subscribers on that.
Exactly. But writing a long form book was not going well for him. So his publisher was frustrated with him. They wanted him to write longer chapters. He was against it. He pushed back. Everybody sees the highlight reel now, but it was pretty messy. And so he ended up getting very strategic. And I remember I think he gave his assistant his social media passwords on Mondays, and he did not go on social media until Fridays or whatever it was. And he just cranked it out.
Just
now it's the number one book in the world.
It's crazy.
But I think that's freedom for all of us too, to know here's a guy who talks about habits that even struggled to finish something.
Yes.
So we're all a work in progress.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But I would say too, our parents are amazing influences in our lives. And of course they're not going to agree with everything we do. I view life as data and meaning. So data comes in and we attribute meaning to it. And my parents the same way. I never thought about not going to college. They were both school teachers. Now they came from these blue collar immigrant families, my dad. So it was a huge blessing to go to college and get a degree and he got a master's degree and became a teacher. Yeah. So to be I would call you a nonconformist, and I applaud you for it. And I'm not saying college is bad.
No.
So, I lived in the corporate space for 25 years, and I saw firsthand. Let me give you two stories. I went to our head of HR a few years ago, and I said, look, I was doing some speaking and some work with Bowling Green soccer team. Great kids. They were interested in interning. And so I went to the head of HR in my company. I said, hey, I think I have potentially a pipeline for some really good interns, high-level collegiate athletes. He's like, John, we're not interested. Bowling Green, why would we consider that education level? We're looking for higher credentialed, higher education interns. So here I am, a leader in the company who went to Bowling Green. Don't have an MBA, by the way.
Yeah.
But had a lot of success. The head of sales went to Eastern Illinois University, no MBA. I would argue that guy changed the culture of our company. And here the head of HR was saying, unless you went to a school of higher education, Ivy League, whatever else, we wouldn't even sniff you.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? I walked away so embarrassed for him. And just the fact that it was laughable to me. It was a slap in the face, and to have that mindset. And I used to see this all the time. If you came into a meeting and you were credentialed, if you went to a high level, not just Ivy League, if you went to, there's a lot of higher
Big Ten kind of,
Northwestern, Notre Dame. I mean, amazing schools.
Yeah.
You were looked at differently. You had a different seat at the table than if you went to a different school. You were elevated.
I think that's a flaw with society, though, too.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
Well, here's my challenge with it. And this is, and no disrespect to anybody that goes to a great school.
Yeah.
You should. If you can go.
Yeah.
If that's a path you choose.
Mm-hmm.
I saw so many people that had incredible educations, high intelligence, that lacked emotional intelligence. They couldn't read a room the right way. Yes. And again, I want to be very mindful and careful. This is no disrespect to anybody that Ivy League or whatever school.
I'm not out here dissing either.
Yeah. Or that goes to college, right?
Yeah.
But I think, there's this whole emotional intelligence to me trumps regular intelligence all day long.
100%.
You need both. But I just saw a lot of doors close in the corporate space based on status. And that irks me a little bit. I think it should never be the case. It should be based on how you perform and what you do, right?
Well, and what we were talking about before this is big companies like Google, IBM, Accenture, I think that's what it is. They don't even require degrees anymore.
Wow, yeah.
And another thing too is if 50% of the workforce is underemployed.
Yeah.
We should think about that.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, we're dealing with this, I said, with my son. He's 17, he's a junior. He struggled with some things, and traditional school environment's probably not best for him.
Yeah.
And so it's exhausting. He comes home exhausted from school.
Yes.
And probably going to be a blessing to get him to even finish high school next year.
Yeah.
But he's got a lawn care business, and we're pushing him towards his entrepreneurship path, and that's fine. Like
I think another important thing, I was reading this in your book, you had 19 personal standards for how you live.
Yeah.
And the one that stuck out to me the most was deep curiosity. I think deep curiosity is the root of everything. I think it all comes down to deep curiosity, because anything in personal growth, like, if one of your standards is, say, I wake up at the same time every single day or something, or just I'm consistent, I think that comes from a place of curiosity even before that. What was the step prior to that, if that makes sense? Like, how can I be a more productive person? Maybe wake up at the same time. It comes from a place of curiosity.
Yeah.
Like learning how to question things.
I think curiosity is such a foundational thing.
Yes.
And to tie it back to the school thing or the career thing, look, I would encourage you're in your 20s, get really freaking curious about what it is. Do experiments.
I haven't shared this story yet, and actually I haven't shared this on any of the podcasts, but I used to get in so much trouble for asking questions.
Really?
When I was in elementary school, they used to actually sit me in the corner alone because I would ask too much, and teachers would get upset with me because
crazy.
I was too
curious.
Basically I was too curious. And I think about that, and that is so freaking messed up.
Yeah.
You're going to try and put a muffle. You're going to try and silence a kid.
Right.
Because he asked too many questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Versus accentuating that.
Yes.
Wow.
I had two teachers. Actually, I had one teacher. Well, it was in 5th grade, and they were co-teachers, Mrs. Spittler and Mrs. Smolin, and they're the only teachers that I ever got along with because they welcomed my curiosity.
Sure.
And then I hated school before that,
Yeah.
but they were the ones who started to change that because they invited it.
Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I would argue it could be the number one business trait
Mm-hmm.
anybody can have is curiosity.
Yeah.
So the ability to ask the right questions,
Yes.
the ability to ask the right question at the right time.
Yeah.
I noticed my first half of my career, I was a pretty selfish sales rep,
Mm-hmm.
and it was all about my quota. The thing that changed for me was taking on a more curious mindset and leading with questions first. Not the other thing too, when you get into certain environments, you think you have to speak all the time and always have the answer.
Yes.
That's a game that you're going to lose. So
I was reading in James this morning, talking about how you got to be slow to speak, quick to listen. And that is so freaking powerful because most people, I mean, I'm not going to say most people, but I've caught myself in the past, but where I've been like, dude, you just want to hear yourself talk right now. You don't even actually have anything good to say.
Sure. Well, we're inherently selfish.
Yes.
We're just human beings. We're broken individuals.
Yes.
So we're in this rat race survival mode. I want to show well. I want to do well.
Yes.
And that's somewhat to what you said earlier. It's not all bad, but if it's not utilized the right way, I love being in boardrooms and meeting rooms, and to say the least.
Yes.
I wasn't always this case, but to me, the best salespeople are actually listening.
Yes.
Looking at the nonverbals around the room. You can pick up so much from just being the observer and the curious person. And I always love too asking the right question at the right time.
Yes.
Or I learned this from Chet Scott, who runs Built to Lead. He's got a thing that he says, "Tell me more."
Yeah.
So when you're talking to somebody,
Tell me more about that.
tell me more.
Yeah.
Or and what else?
Yeah.
I do some coaching now, so I'm knee deep in this stuff of just getting the other person to speak. I wish I had some of this training when I was early in my sales career, but from a human connection standpoint, allowing the space to breathe and
To connect
and speak, and how for me to build trust with you, like when we had coffee together 2 months ago, you're incredible, dude. You're 22. You have a natural curiosity about you. That's why you do a podcast. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And you're a great speaker too, but you are naturally curious. That's probably pretty rare for someone your age. But even when we engaged having coffee, I walked away from that conversation going, this kid doesn't seem 22 to me.
Yeah.
Right. So that kudos to you. I
Thank
would
you.
affirm you that way. Keep that up, because that's really, it's very natural too. You can't fake it.
No.
But people, and it's not necessarily what you say, it's how you make someone feel.
Yes.
That's way more
Yes.
important.
That's way more important. Yeah. I think what I've been, being awakened to awakened to, whatever, don't hate on me for that. Is the heart behind it.
Yeah.
Is everything. 'Cause I think people can, I feel like I can smell when somebody doesn't actually care what I have to say. I know when I actually know when somebody's trying to connect with me.
How do you know?
It's weird. I feel it. I can see it in their eyes.
Yeah.
And and I can hear it in their voice. And, I've had encounters with people where the entire time, which this either could be because I ask good questions, or they spend the entire time talking about themselves. Mm-hmm. And I know it's because I guess I'd say that's definitely, just a byproduct of doing a lot of interviews is, I don't know, you just, there's been, I've had encounters where like, wow, you didn't ask a single question about me. And it's not in the sense of like, oh, I need you to ask questions about me.
Of course.
But if you're trying to build a relationship, you don't talk about yourself the entire time.
Right.
So,
there's a reciprocation.
Yes. You two have to play.
It's almost like a tennis match of sorts. because you can almost go too far the other way where it's, and I've done this before, by the way, where I've gone, I feel like it was maybe Chris Voss. Have you read Never Split the Difference?
Yes, he's the CIA.
I think FBI. One of them,
FBI
hostage negotiator.
Yes.
And it might. I want to give credit where credit's due. I think it's him, but it might not be. But someone said, again, maybe it's him. Go to a dinner party and see how long you can keep someone talking. And you just ask open-ended questions, and you just play a game of sorts. And so that's the extreme of it. But the concept is pretty amazing, because if you do that, and I would encourage people to try it, in a conversation with a friend or a spouse or whatever, brother, sister, whatever, people will walk away feeling so good if you get them talking about themselves.
Oh, typically the person who talks the most feels the best about a conversation. And I always keep that in the back of my mind, because especially if this is somebody who I want to,
right?
Hey, I mean, impress or do. I'm going to keep that person talking a little bit.
There's an art and a science to it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's got to be authentic.
Yes.
You got to care, and you got to.
Yes, absolutely.
But there is, in a real dialogue, I think there is the reciprocation.
Yes.
Piece. So I would say our coffee together, probably time flew. I feel like we met for maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours, because thankfully you're naturally, amazing that you're so young and can,
likewise.
Darius, and can have that dialogue. And I've been trained on all this stuff, by the way. Maybe I have some natural ability, but I've been trained to sell and be in rooms and reciprocate and those sorts of things too. So kudos to you. Did you
read Super Communicators?
I just bought it.
I know.
Maybe your recommendation.
Yes, I recommend that to you, but you sent me a picture of you had just gotten it.
I haven't read it. You're the second person that recommended it.
Yeah.
I love Duhigg.
Yes, Charles Duhigg.
And so yes, it's on my list with about 12 other books I'm reading now.
Oh my gosh.
What was the key learning?
Understanding that there's 3 different types of conversations you can be having, which is what is this really about? Which that's more hey, what are we? Which that's kind of the topical. I guess I'd categorize a what is this, where you're trying to figure out what is this conversation about? Like trying to figure out, if it's about dinner, like where are we going for dinner, or talking about plans typically.
Is it like the surface level?
Yeah, surface level plans. Yeah, and then the other 2 I know a lot better, but the other 2 is the emotional conversation, where you're just talking more about feelings. How does that make you feel? Or, what did you think about that in that situation? And then the third type of conversation is identity conversation. So we're talking about, like, who is John? Who is Daniel? Whereas before you might have been, I'm a soccer player. Yeah. I'm a former state champion, in soccer, high school soccer. But the thing is when individuals are having 2 different types of conversations, they're not going to connect. But also, to even further, unless you have an emotional conversation with somebody, you're not going to be able to bond. Yeah. You have to have, if you want to bond with somebody, you have to get vulnerable, and you have to have an emotional conversation.
For sure.
Which is super fascinating, because then I start thinking about conversations I've had in the past from, just think about things like, if they went differently, I'm like, you weren't having a certain kind of conversation.
Yeah.
And that's
interesting.
That's a whole nother thing too, is Duhigg I think this was Duhigg. He was talking about, some other stuff is just coming back into my mind too. Duhigg was talking about how every conversation is a silent negotiation to figure out what, it's like you're kind of waltzing around in a circle trying to figure out what does this, like, where are we going? Where is this conversation going? And I guess I could, I'll bring this
Go
up.
for it.
I was hanging out with this girl a couple of nights ago, and you took her out to go get ice cream.
All right.
And in the beginning it's kind of surface level-y, right? You're trying to figure out, okay, what are we really going to talk about? And then I forget what it was, but then we just started talking, and we just dove deep, and then just like totally opened the door for so many other really intentional conversations. Yeah. But I was just thinking about that, and maybe this is, I was just every single conversation, I don't know, you're trying to figure out like, okay, where is this leading to?
Yeah.
So
it's really interesting what you said, and I obviously have to read the book.
yes,
the emotional piece.
yeah,
It is the great unlock. If you can
yes,
get there and provide a safe environment
yeah,
where
trust,
it's trust.
yes,
I mean, I experienced this in business. I'm sure you have.
yeah,
If you can build trust with someone, I find now when I give a talk, for example, if I'm a keynote at a conference or something, or a workshop with a company, whatever it is, or it could be one-on-one conversation.
yeah,
Vulnerability is a superpower.
yeah,
I believe that. Now, I'm not saying just be vulnerable just to be vulnerable.
yeah.
It's got to be authentic.
Yes, 100%. Oh, I could tell you about a time. There's a couple weeks ago, this guy was trying to engage with me in a conversation, like a vulnerable. I wasn't in a headspace where I wanted that, so I just was super shallow, cut short, and just disregarded, because I was in that moment. I was like, I don't want to connect right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's just the reality.
And that's it. You got to read the room.
Yeah.
Right. But knowing if you're connecting with someone or a group, I've just found, especially when I open up about my story, it disarms the room.
Yes.
Disarms people.
Yes.
And so I did a workshop for a company in January, and it was supposed to be a keynote, by the way. It turned into a 5-hour workshop, which is a whole other story, because I had to figure out how to put on a workshop for 30 people. So talk about baptism by fire.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So it went well. I did my opening 30 minutes, and then I developed a bunch of exercises for people to do. Actually, a lot of curiosity type exercises where they got in groups. But because I was willing to go there and share and emotionally connect, it was crazy. The room opened up. One guy shared about some challenges he was having, sales guy. And then all of a sudden, then the C-level team's in the room. The CEO jumps in and says, well, I just want to share with everybody that I had a miscarriage 5 years ago.
Wow.
This was a sales kickoff meeting. At sales kickoff, and I never said anything to anybody, which then led the CTO sitting next to her to talk about he had a heart attack because he was so stressed out because he couldn't turn off the release valve, and never told anybody about it. So the trust that was built in that room, and we still had a couple hours left in the workshop, but you can feel it. You learn to see the emotions of it.
Yes.
And I could say this is in any conversation too. You feel the emotional resonance.
You feel the like authenticity behind it too, because you can't fake that.
No. So. Authentic vulnerability, or sincerity, whatever you want to call it. And I talk about this a little bit in the book too, but for me, it's opened up so much trust in relationships where you asked me before we came on, can I ask you, are you an open book? And I'm like, yeah, man, let's go wherever you want to take it. Now that I was not always this way,
like
as I shared with you. So learning through the journey of, the more I open up, and I actually had one of my speaking coaches, Michael Port, heroic public speaking I took to learn how to be a keynoter a few years ago.
He received a lot of praise in your book.
Yeah, he's an incredible guy.
Yeah. Was he the one who kind of helped you unlock your vulnerability?
Yeah. So here's what he did. So I wrote my first speech in 2019. It was all about servant leadership and sales.
Yeah.
And I think it was a pretty good speech, but I wrote him an email and I said, Michael, it just doesn't feel authentic enough for me. I'm not sure why. But I said, let me share some more of the backstory. I haven't shared this yet in this interview, but so all that messiness from soccer, hiding.
Yes, let's go back to that. Yes.
By the way, 17 therapists later over the course of 17 or so years. So
17 therapists.
Right? I'm like, man, it's like the Rolodex of therapists I'm trying to figure out. So the thing that changed everything for me was a couple things. Found a Christian therapist. Huge. And I almost lost my marriage through this, by the way. So talk about it in the book as well. But you go through this process where it's survival mode, and I'm a mess. And for the most part, no one knew it because I did pretty well at work. I was fortunate enough, got promoted up the chain, was a pretty high level sales rep fairly early in my career. had some decent results, but wasn't sustainable because I was inauthentic. It was all about me and my quota.
Mm-hmm.
And still in party mode.
Oh, yeah.
Almost living two separate lives. I had my home life, starting a family, and then I had my road life. And I started having panic attacks. Mm-hmm. So when I would go and present, and by the way, this is an important piece. Freshman year of high school, I was a speech champion at St. Ed's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that.
So, and my mom was a godsend. My mom and I used to wake up. I remember when I was prepping for the speech contest, 5:30 in the morning. Wow. It's about atomic habits. Why I love that so much. We would rep. I would, for an hour every morning leading up to the speech, my mom would rep with me.
Wow.
Tonality, pauses, everything. So I got to the point where I delivered and won the speech championship. English teacher pulls me aside. Brother Joe says, John, I think you can be the first 4-time champion at St. Ed's. Come back the next year. I don't work as hard at it. Mm-hmm. Probably not hit as many of those 5:30 a.m.ers with my mom. I finished in 3rd place. I ended up transferring, so, but I wasn't going to be 4-time champion. Anyway, that's part of the story too, because I got cocky. I thought I was a heck of a speaker and I didn't need to work at it. Yes. There's an element there too. And this is where God, for me, shows up in all this, because I go from speech champion to panic attack speaking to the point where I had to leave a room during a sales presentation. Not good for a sales guy, right? No. So I was broken. Yeah. This is 12, 15 years ago. I forget the exact date. And by the way, when I had that panic attack and left the room, I told everybody I had a headache.
I read that. And that stuck out to me, because your therapist was the one who told you, hey, if you feel this coming on and you're doing a presentation, just say you have a headache.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it clear as day. I faked like I was coughing. I felt my head going. Your body got warm a little bit, and I left the room. I mean, completely embarrassing, but
What did that do to your confidence?
I mean, shattered. I went up to my room and slept for 3 or 4 hours. I showed up to the company dinner that night. Mm-hmm. It felt like coming out of that therapist's office, the psychiatrist's office, when I was diagnosed at 21. Again, like, here I am in this corporate setting and I'm a fraud. I'm not going to make it. That's when the suicidal thoughts started coming in. You asked about that earlier. That's when it was, oh my gosh, I have my wife, gave up her career to stay at home. I had my kids, and I was a fraud. I wasn't making it. Yeah. Here it is. I made it at a pretty high level at soccer, and then I bonked out. Struggled. I made it at a pretty high level in business, and I bonked out. Yeah. And so, but here's what the book was about, is the path back, because there's a good story to this. And so,
a great story, yeah.
With Intention was born because I knew at that moment something in me said, this is not the end of the story. We're gonna write this story. And around that same time, you think about, I'm having panic attacks speaking. So every meeting I go into, I'm afraid to speak. Not just at that moment. So I'm sitting in the back of rooms during presentations. I'm like the lead account manager some of this time, and I don't want to speak. Got taken off an account, had another account that wanted to leave because I was this selfish sales rep. We weren't serving them. They were going to go to competition. Thankfully, I had a executive that still believed in me. Barrett Callahan called me and said, John, I still believe in you, but I want you to invent yourself. Wow. And all this is happening. And, okay, so the movie Top Gun, the first Top Gun.
Yeah. I've seen it.
You look like you could have been in the new one.
I'll take that.
The first Top Gun, Goose dies.
Yes.
Maverick is his co-pilot, Tom Cruise. And they say, we got to get Maverick back up in the air as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. And that movie, I loved that movie as a kid. And that I felt that I needed to get back up and speak as soon as possible. Yeah. So I started going to Toastmasters.
2011.
Which is a speaking club, very non-pressure. Every Thursday I went for 2 years, Vineyard Church just up the street from here. Yeah. And I remember the first one, we had to do our bio, and I'm like, my hand's shaking, I'm reading off a piece of paper. I mean, it was that bad.
Yes, yeah.
But slowly but surely I rebuilt the muscles and got a little more confidence, and I started to take every opportunity to speak. I got invited in. My neighbor was a football coach, and he said, hey, will you come speak to the team? I just started doing stuff scared.
Yeah.
Started to MC a charity golf event. Did it scared.
Mm-hmm.
Little by little, just start business presentations. But here's the flip. Here's where the magic is. Identity.
Yeah.
So around this time, and by the way, my wife was a Christian since I think she came out of the womb with her hands in the air, like with worship music on. Her parents were amazing Christians.
Michelle, right?
Michelle, yep. Yeah. And so, man, I look back and I can't believe she married me.
Yeah.
I think she always saw that I was seeking, but I just didn't know. And so, I had a pastor around that time. So I had the panic attack. I'm doing the work to get back.
You're also kind of living that double life too, right?
At this point,
or in the past.
Yes. At this point, I realized things had to change.
Yes.
I get the right therapist, Christian therapist. Almost lose my marriage during this time. Again, I remember driving home from Ocean Club, a restaurant. I'm out with clients, probably drinking a little too much around this time. Before, like, everything was, that low point.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, I could just turn off the side of the road right now and got a life insurance policy. No one would know. They think it's an accident.
Yeah.
But something in me said, there's more to live for. This is not the end of the story. Wow. I don't know what that was. I think it was God, probably. Yeah. And around that time, we started going to a church, New Albany Presbyterian Church, and the pastor, David Milroy, I went and met with him. And Michelle and I were working through stuff. And he challenged me, and he said, John, have you ever committed your life to Christ? And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean by that? And I'd never read the Bible at this point. I mean, I've like read pieces of the Bible.
So you're showing up. I think there's so you're showing up to church every Sunday.
Yep.
But never had really been like, I am putting my foot down for this. I'm going all in with Jesus. Again,
dual lives. Yes, I had been going to church really since we got married.
Yeah.
But not really all in.
Yeah.
Wanting it, but not understanding it.
That's the thing is, I think once you understand it, that's when things start to change.
Yeah. Okay, so there you go. So I commit my life to Christ October 21st, 2015. Get down on my knees with David. We pray. And I'm all in now. I'm like, okay. I meet with my father-in-law, who's a devout Christian. He brings me his Bible, highlighted, a bunch of note cards with scripture. Says, John, read one chapter from Proverbs a day. It's 31 chapters. That was my first foray into the Bible. And by the way, it's okay to highlight in it and everything else. So I read the Old Testament, New Testament. I'm start going to Bible studies, small groups, different things. And I came across 2 Corinthians, where Paul's asking Jesus to remove the thorn from his side.
Yeah.
What does Jesus say to him?
I don't know what he says, but I remember we've talked about this before.
My power is made perfect in weakness.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so
good.
I'm
not going to remove the thorn. Maybe the thorn needs to stay in there.
Yes.
And that changed my perspective on all the journey up until then. And believe me, there's scar tissue still from all those years of anxiety. There's time. I have to be very mindful and planful about breathing and working out and different things. Moments I still have, I feel myself in anxious states. But there was something that flipped when I read that Bible verse in that chapter of when I am weak, then I am strong.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. And if I could not run away from the past, not run away from the failed soccer stuff, the family stuff, the speaking, maybe shine a light on it a little bit, do it for the right reasons. Like maybe that's the path. And not that it's been a perfect path, by the way, because I told you, even 5 years later, I wrote a speech, which was all about servant leadership and sales. So I turned my sales career around. And it flipped from being this selfish sales rep to really serving the client first. Sales became somewhat easy because I was doing it the right way, that curiosity you talked about. But that just to finish that thought on the speech. So Michael Port, when I wrote him an email, I said, it just doesn't feel authentic to me. I never shared this with you, but I was a speech champion, and then I had panic attack speaking, couldn't speak.
Wow. So he knew exactly where you're coming from.
And I said, now I feel like I'm called to be speaking to people. And he wrote me back and said, very bluntly, congratulations. That's what your new speech is about. You need to launch an investigation. And if a guy like you breaks yourself open, you will have everybody in the palm of your hand.
Wow.
This is one of the best speaking coaches in the world. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So actually, I stopped speaking, pursuing that full time at that point, and I jumped into writing the book. That changed my whole focus on the book. I just decided to open myself up.
Yes.
I want to teach and I have frameworks and different things, but let me share the story.
Yeah.
And be very open about it. And it's been incredible.
Yeah. I want to hit back on your marriage.
Yeah.
What have you learned about choosing a good partner?
Yeah. Oh, it's everything. And it takes a ton of work. It's not, my wife and I go to a marriage retreat every year called Breakthrough. Julia Woods is the person that runs it. She's incredible. We've done coaching with her. Look, we went through a ton of therapy together too.
Yes.
It was not good. I was really living a double life for a long time. She could have easily left me, but she's a godly woman and she's stuck in.
Yes.
And just this, I see the fracture that happened in my family's world and my parents not having the faith foundation and not, because I really think if they did, I wish I could go back in time and help them, because I think it could have helped them navigate all the challenges. Because you can go back. That's the foundation.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, look, it's constant work. We're not perfect at it, but we're doing the work, and it's just, you want to pick the right person.
Yes.
But for her, I really wasn't a Christian when she married me. Which, looking back, I don't know, you'd have to ask her. I don't think she would change anything, but she saw something in me.
Yes.
Right, that was seeking and wanted something more. But obviously had to go through a lot of trials and tribulations to get there. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, well, it just sounds like, no, you guys invested in your relationship.
Yeah.
That's what I think about too. And I've heard of, some other relationships. Well, we have like a mutual friend where they kind of went through some pretty serious marriage issues too. And they started investing in their relationship.
Okay.
But I think that's the key.
You have to. You have to invest in a relationship. You have to invest in yourself.
Yes.
You have to invest in your friendships. It's how it works. It's, if you're not investing every single day, you have to be growing.
Yes.
And if you're stagnant,
you're screwed.
Yeah, you're just going to start going in the other direction.
Yeah.
And it's hard work. This is not easy work. I don't want to sugarcoat this. This is, but you have to embrace the suffering a bit in the process. That's how we grow as humans. Yeah. And that's what this whole book I wrote is about: growth and service. Yes. You grow yourself, so you put yourself in position to serve others. And that's where fulfillment comes from.
Yeah. I think another thing too, I actually literally wrote this the other day. Fulfillment also comes through authenticity. When you're just being unapologetically yourself.
Sure.
And you're not wavering in your identity. Because I think, especially, back in 2015 when you're, I'd say you had a born again moment. Yep. That was your moment, your born again moment. You're like, wait, my identity isn't wrapped up in my outcomes and what I'm doing, but my identity is in Christ. Yeah. And I think I think for me recently, I was having coffee with a friend earlier this morning. So I caught fire for Jesus about a year and a half ago. maybe a little bit longer than that. But I still was struggling though with my identity as far as, wow, the hope of glory lives inside of me. Mm-hmm. Like the Holy Spirit, Christ lives inside of me. And I think when you start to understand that and your identity and that you are beloved and that God is already well pleased with you, there isn't nothing that you need to do. It allows you to start to be like, sure, I can breathe. And I don't have to perform. I don't have to strive. I don't have to do all these things because my validation doesn't come from the exterior. Yeah. Exterior, it comes from the Father, right, which is super fascinating.
And it's not perfect.
No, it's not perfect.
It almost becomes harder.
Yeah, but also too, I think the thing is I think we were talking about this a little bit too, is I think most Christians still identify as sinners rather than they don't identify with righteousness. Okay. Where I think when you view yourself as just like a dirty pile of rags versus like, wow, what Christ did for me on the cross has, when I was undeserving of it, has made me righteous. I mean, sure, it's kind of like an interesting thing because you're like, right, you're never perfect, but I don't identify with imperfection. I identify with perfection.
Yeah. Yeah, I view it in this lens. It's a resurrection mindset.
Yes.
Christ died on a Friday, rose 3 days later.
Yes.
Right? Life, we're going to fail.
Yeah.
I would argue every day, multiple times a day.
Yeah.
The question becomes, what's your response?
Yes.
And if you take on a resurrection mindset, it means I used to talk to my sales team about this a lot. Mm-hmm. Expect adversity every day. And any human, I would say, if you can preload that adversity is going to happen, process over outcome. You said it earlier. It just becomes how you're going to respond to it.
Yes.
And you almost become someone that wants the adversity a little bit.
Yeah.
That's one of the standards.
You're looking for it.
You're almost seeking it out because it's like, okay, bring it because it's going to make me stronger and I know I'm going to battle through and make something of it. I think it's a big misnomer, people to think you get to a place and just life is easy and it's kumbaya, whatever else. Now there is a righteousness mindset to that too, of knowing, I think, and Paul says this somewhere in the Bible, that being content in hardships and great stuff, right? Yeah. Can you be content in both? And that was not exactly what he said. I'm not super, I'm not going to quote scripture exactly, but
yeah, that's all right.
That's where the magic is though. How do you find the beauty in the moments of struggle?
Yes. There's a James, I'm looking this up on my computer. It talks about it. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And I've read this before, and I think my favorite part about that, this is verses 2-4. My favorite part about that is in verse 4 when it says, let perseverance finish its work. Because I think that's so many people find themselves in the process of something and they don't want to endure that process. They just want to take the easy way out. But it's if you find yourself doing that or looking for that easy way out, right, you're not going to reap the benefit of maturity. Which is your I'm sorry.
No,
you're good. Yes.
Okay, I got to ask you.
Yes.
22, dropped out of school, building your business, real estate, content.
Yeah.
I call it impact.
Yeah.
Is it messy?
Is it messy? I think right now I'm learning a lot. I don't know if I would call it messy. What do you mean by messy? Messy in what regard?
Messy from the standpoint of, is it changing and evolving as you go? Meaning you take steps. Do you have to pivot? Are you experiencing adversity? Are you struggling at times? Do you have any fears and doubts?
I am always, I think back to a year ago, especially with the podcast stuff. I was like, man, I wish there were so many things I wish I did differently.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't beat myself up about that stuff. Also, too, is for a few years, especially when the last few years, I used to stress out myself so much because I was like, I need to go out and go change the world and do all this stuff. And it's like, yes, that's very noble. And I think that's great. That's like a great pursuit. But oftentimes, I heard a mentor told me this, the people who change the world, they weren't setting out to change the world. It was just a byproduct of them being who they were. It's so if you're striving to go do all these things, it's good. Yeah. I don't know. There's something there because everyone wants to be, I feel like, everyone wants to be the superhero. Everyone wants to be the savior.
Yep.
And I'm starting to have a whole different view on this. Jesus did that. He accomplished that for me. I'm just going to go look more like Jesus. And by that, the byproduct of that is going to be whatever it is. It could look like what the world may deem as success, or it could look different than that. But when I started adopting that, I'm like, oh, I can breathe a little bit, because now it gives me a license to just not have to go out and change the world. I'm going to go steward my day really, really well. Yeah. And then from there, if it compounds into something, it will. If it doesn't, so be it.
Yeah, I love it. No, I get it. I asked the question about the messiness because I get asked all the time. So I just left 25-year corporate sales career in November, building my own business now. Mm-hmm. Everybody says, how are you doing? How's it going? Yeah. And
what do you say to that? Yeah.
I say it's going amazing.
Yes.
It's exhilarating.
Yes.
But it's also really messy.
Yes.
I have down days and I have moments going, oh crap, what did I do? I just gave up this cushy, amazing career that I could have ridden out for the next 15 years.
Yeah.
Had a pile of money and been super fine.
Yes.
But that's success in the world's terms. 48.
I find 49. That super fascinating that in the midst of such a stable career in corporate, you're 25 years in.
Yep.
That is super fascinating that you decided to leave, because I know multiple people who are just like, oh, I've only got about 5-10 more years. Yep. They're not willing to take that risk.
Sure.
What was it that prompted you to take that risk?
Okay, so I'm 48, and I thought about my next 10 years and what I want my legacy to be. Not just next 10 years, call it the next, Lord willing, the next 25 years.
Yes.
And so when I wrote the book, I was starting to speak at various conferences. I come from the insurance technology space, so I was speaking at some conferences, having an impact. And a lot of folks in the company were very much behind it, but some questioned it. Like, what is, if John's doing this, is he focused on selling software?
Yeah.
I believe it was a both and.
Yes.
You could do both, and there's a lot of trust being built in the marketplace with my message, those sorts of things. And we could have made it work. I felt like I did not want to, a lot of it put the company in that predicament of there's a little discomfort, and what does this look like? And we talked about carving out a different role for me potentially, but I felt like I needed to be fully expressed. And here's what it comes down to. Every time I get off a stage or out of a meeting and I have someone say, thank you, here's my story. Like, I had a guy that spoke at a conference in Nashville a couple of years ago. It was funny. It was my first big conference with like the microphone.
Oh, yeah.
300 or so people. I spoke in between Dusty Slay, who's a comedian on Netflix, pretty popular dude.
No way. You spoke before or after?
I had to follow a comedian, and then John Acuff, who's a stud author, speaker. And I just remember it was intense, and I'm still like building my speaking muscles at this point. But I had a guy at the end of the speech waiting outside the green room for me. I get out. I never met the guy, and he gives me a hug. And he's, thank you. And he shares a little bit about his story with me. And so I knew at that moment, and that's pretty much happens in most rooms.
Yeah.
I feel called to do the work. I feel like because I started speaking, I lost it.
Yeah.
I feel like I have it back.
Yes.
And I feel like I've been freed up. I really think there's another Michael Portism says, be helpful, not good when you speak. So I don't focus on perfection. It's about how do I serve the audience and the person in front of me.
Your quota was saying, you said it's how do I sound versus how can I give?
Yeah.
Yeah, you said that in the book. I thought that was really good.
Huge.
Because how do I sound is focused on me.
Yep.
How do I give is focused on you, the people.
So I get asked a lot for speaking advice or
Mm-hmm.
presenting people in the business world. Hey, I know you've worked on this a lot. I know you had struggles and then you figured it out. And what it always comes down to, and it's scary. Presenting is not easy. What do they say? The second hardest thing for people
Public
who are
speaking?
scared of public speaking versus death or whatever. I had a girl that reached out to me from CCC, my former company, and she had to give a presentation at the end of the year. And she's like, John, I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
Last year, I hid in the hotel room. I didn't even go. I did it virtually. I can't be in the room with 75 people. And I said, okay, hold on. This is a couple days before her talk. And I said, what do you want them to feel? Let's take the onus off you. I know you're going to do the work and present the material.
Yes.
But right now you're thinking too much about you.
Yes.
And that's so normal. So normal.
Super normal.
I have to get out of my own head even to this day, and I'll write down be helpful, not good. But you think about, what do I want someone to experience or feel? Not just think, because, when you present, you want someone to think differently, sure.
Yes.
But I want someone to feel inspired or cared for or excited, or maybe it's provoked. Or maybe it's angry. I don't know. There's many emotions I've been trained in all this. But it changes your whole perspective on preparation. And then in the moment you show up and you just make someone feel something. Yes, you got to prepare and do the work. That's
you have to.
Obviously part of it. But she went and presented. It was the best. Texted me right after. It was amazing. I felt so good. I felt in the zone, right?
Yes.
And I've probably had 10 other situations like that. And it's so fun to pay it forward now.
Yes.
It's like, well, it's not about you. It's about them.
Yeah.
And that's how going from being good or perfect to being helpful and serving, what you said.
Yes.
Dude, I mean, think about if every conversation you show up and just say, how can I serve the person in front of me? How can I make them feel, I don't know, I want you to feel inspired.
Yes.
Every time I'm with whatever the emotion is, and you actually like live into that.
Yeah.
And that's the filter. That's the process. Yeah. The outcome's going to take care of itself.
Amen.
We don't know where it goes.
No.
But if you just show up ready to serve, I mean, that's where the magic is.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's a pretty good place to stop. Man, this has been an incredible conversation.
Love it, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Fun.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. We're going to have to do a part 2.
Yeah.
At some point.
Anytime.
So where can people find you at?
So my website, johngiganti.com, pretty much has everything. I have a newsletter, free newsletter. I have a course, obviously the book.
Yeah.
On LinkedIn too.
Okay, yeah.
Instagram, I'm pumping out a lot of stuff now there. Reach out. I would love to chat with anybody, and it's fun, man. I love what you're doing. Keep doing it.
I
it's
appreciate
incredible. Keep serving.
Yeah.
And know this, you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
Your 20s are for learning. Your 30s, 40s, 50s are for earning. Like test all this stuff out. Do these experiments. I mean, obviously, I hope you earn a lot, because you can. And when you earn a lot, that's okay, because you can give back more too.
Yeah.
Right? But as a guy who's pivoting at 48, right? It's not. I'm telling my son this all the time. Everybody, your story's just being written. You can take all the ingredients from your past and you can use them for good. Don't be afraid to fail. Experiment. And good things will happen. And keep that foundation on Christ.
Amen. Amen. Alrighty. Well, I appreciate it. So
thanks, brother.
Yeah, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode. Make sure to subscribe, follow along, just stay up to date. We're going to be pumping out a lot more content. So appreciate you all for listening, and I'll see you next time.